Hi everyone, welcome to this Flip Learning video. First of all, today we're going to be looking at the methodology. I'd like to watch this video throughout to the end, write down any questions that you might have, bring those to the next lesson, and also I'd like you to make sure you take a look at section 7 of the module handbook, which will thoroughly explain all of the methodology chapter itself. So the methodology then, it's 1,200 words. You've got roughly 2 weeks to work upon this. Now, that doesn't seem a lot of time, but I don't want you to panic because you have done most of this in your proposal and you've probably done most of the data collection in it already. The 7 main sections, 6 of these will be in your main piece of your report. Your 7th one won't count towards the word count, but it will be needed in your appendices, which is simply a step-by-step plan of what you've done. It can be as short as long as you want it to be. What I like to do here then is a really quick overview because I'm going to explain it thoroughly in the research handbook and obviously in class as well. This is just a brief understanding for you, a brief introduction before you come to a lesson. So research design, think about case studies, comparative studies, longitudinal studies. Whatever your study actually is, you need to go out there, find some quotes to back up why you're using that sort of research design. Make sure you speak about whether it's qualitative or quantitative. Again, some definitions would be great in there. And include your research questions and hypotheses, or hypotheses depending on which one you're going to use. If you're using qualitative, it's going to be research questions. If you're using quantitative, it's going to be hypotheses. If you're going to have a mixed method study, please come have a chat with me and we can decide which is going to be more appropriate. Sample and sampling, really simple. You sample your participants, who you're going to use without giving their names away, so you just describe them. And sampling is how you select them. Do you do it at random, or at convenience, or do you purposely select those people? Data collection methods. Think back to research methods where we looked at interviewing, observations, questionnaires, focus groups, lab or field-based testing. What I want you to do is thoroughly explain that section. So thinking about why you've chosen that method and always justify exactly the reasons for this. Think about the materials that you used as well. Next section we'll look at data analysis. This relates to assignment 3 of research methods. It's the one where you had to create a mock research project, or 2 mock research projects, one for qualitative and one for quant, and you looked at different ways of analysing the data. So if it's quantitative, it may be a t-test, or a Wilcox and Pears test, or a Mann-Whitney-U test. If it's qualitative, you'll be looking at data reduction, displaying data, and verifying your conclusions. Next section, we'll look at ethical considerations, assignment 2 of research methods. This is all the stuff where we looked at Derren Brown, for example. We looked at the street sales scenario. Think about confidentiality, anonymity, data protection, etc., etc. If you've got any of those factors that you can speak about, i.e. if you use consent forms, ethics forms, speak about this in your project. It'll add a lot more credibility to your project itself. A final section, which kind of relates back to assignment 1 in research methods, where we looked at reliability and validity. You've got to make these predictions or assumptions based upon your study of what level of validity and reliability it's going to actually have. Think about the 2 main types of reliability, inter-observer and test-retest, and the 5 main types of validity. So, on to hypotheses. In terms of research questions, I'm going to explain these a lot more in detail in class. I can come around one by one to explain how each one will relate to your study. But I thought for hypotheses it's going to be something that people may need to revisit. That's why I've included it on this PowerPoint. So, 2 types of hypotheses, experimental and the null. Every study is going to have 1 null hypothesis. Other studies will be looking at having multiple or just 1 experimental hypothesis. The experimental is something that you think is going to happen or could happen, i.e. it's a prediction. The null hypothesis is stating that it will have no effect. So, the type of hypotheses then. We've got the experimental and the null, as I discussed on the previous slide. The example I'm going to give you is looking at LucasAid Sport. So if I were trying to improve performance levels, my hypothesis could be LucasAid Sports Drink will improve performance levels in male college first team players more than water. The null hypothesis in this case would be that there will be no difference in performance levels when using LucasAid Sports Drinks and water. The common belief with the null hypothesis is that it's the direct opposite to the experimental, which isn't actually the case. Because in that case it would be that water is more beneficial than LucasAid. If you wanted to test that as well, you would simply have 2 experimental hypotheses referred to as H1 or H2. You can have as many of these as you want. So it could be water will actually be more beneficial for sports performance than LucasAid sports drinks. The null hypothesis will stay exactly the same. Always remember null equals nothing. There will be no difference in performance levels between the 2 variables, or 3, 4 variables, depending on how many that you've actually got. Final bit of information for you then, this is a timeline of events. As I said at the start, this can be short as long as you want it to be, but it's simply a step-by-step plan of what you have done in your study. Locate that in your appendices, and that's kind of job done in terms of methodology. One more point I would like you to note is that the data analysis section contributes heavily to your distinction criteria for the entire project. So make sure that you thoroughly explain the methods that you have used to analyse your data. So you've got to be using quotes here to support your actual methods, and your methods need to be logical. So if you've done a qualitative study, don't be trying to do a t-test. Or if you've done a quantitative study, don't be trying to use coding or trying to transcribe an imaginary transcript that doesn't exist. If you have any more questions before the lesson, feel free to email me, come and see me. Otherwise, bring any questions that you have to start the lesson and we'll try and answer them then. Okay, thank you very much.